Conditions of help. In order to help, 3 social conditions must be met at the table. First, the acting player must willingly accept help from his compatriots. Help cannot be forced or surreptitious. It must be open and agreed upon. The acting player is free to turn it down. Second, any player who is helping must then physically give the acting player one of his dice to roll. This is so we know if you're helpful or not. Lastly, the helping player must participate in the scene. He describes how his character is helping the other. How can I help? Once help has been accepted, you have to determine if and how other characters can help. First rule of help. Skills may help skills and stats. Stats may help stats. Stats may not help skills. Circles may help circles, if appropriate. Resources may help resources. Second rule of help. The helping ability must be related in some way. Similar skills are the best candidates for help. Often this is situational, but the help must make sense to the players. The fork listing for skills is a good guide, but not the definitive source. The GM is the final arbiter of who and who can't help. See the next page for more on forks. Helping dice. If the exponent of the helping ability is 4 or lower, 1 die is given to the acting player as help. If the exponent of the ability is 5 or higher, 2 dice are granted. A soldier with field dressing is helping a midwife with herbalism treat his wounded friend. They are trying to treat a severe wound to the leg, Ob 5 for herbalism. The 2 players decide that the midwife is the primary for this test, and the soldier will help. The soldier has a field dressing skill of B4, and thus adds 1 die. The player hands the helping die over to the midwife's player, who adds it to her herbalism skill of B5 for this test. Fields of related knowledge. A player may have his character use his varied experience to help himself. We call this using your fields of related knowledge, or forks. When testing a skill, each related skill the character possesses can be used, like help, to add an additional die, plus 1d, to the roll. Fork dice are different than helping dice. If the related skill is exponent 7 or higher, add plus 2d. Meg is testing her Elven Lawmaster's history skill. She's looking for information about dwarven culture so she can add a die from her character's dwarf-wise skill. Or, Rich's Great One is laying waste to his inferiors with his axe skill. Rich wants to fight dirty, so he adds a die from his brawling skill. He describes his orc throwing his elbows and knees and generally being a bastard. Forks are situational. The players suggest them through roleplay, and the GM arbitrates which are applicable and which are not. Players describe how their forks affect their actions. GMs then incorporate the forks into the results of the test. Also, just to be clear, stats and attributes may never fork. Exponent 0. If your stat, skill or attribute is currently exponent 0, you may not test this ability. You may not receive help, fork into, or spend Arthur on it. It is unavailable until you advance it, replenish it, or recover. Unskilled tests. Beginner's luck. If a character does not have an appropriate skill for a test, he may test using a stat instead. Every skill has a stat on which it is based. We call this its root. However, when rolling a root stat in place of a skill, double the base obstacle of the test. Ob 1 becomes Ob 2, Ob 4 becomes Ob 8. Easy stuff won't be too much of a problem, but more complex tasks will be all but impossible. When testing for beginner's luck, double the base obstacle, then add disadvantages to that. Don't double the disadvantages. Tools. Some skills are listed with a requirement for tools. Tests made without the necessary tools suffer a double obstacle penalty. This can be combined with the beginner's luck penalty. When using expendable tools, roll a die of fate for each time they are used after the first. A result of 1 indicates the tools have been used up and must be replenished by the appropriate means. Replenishing tools. The Resources chapter lists obstacles for purchasing certain toolkits. The Scavenging skill can also be used to replenish tools, if appropriate. The Blacksmith and Black Metal Artifice skills can both be used to make various types of tools. Written instructions. Occasionally a character will stumble across a set of instructions in-game, an item or some information that can aid him. All instructions must be given a complexity obstacle by the GM. Simple and clear stuff that can be easily transmitted through text and illustrations is ob 1 or 2. More complex instructions, like those that teach martial art or how to build a trebuchet, are 3 to 5. Really arcane stuff only goes up from there. The character reading the instructions must pass a reading or research test against the obstacle. If successful, the instructions grant a helping die to an appropriate skill test, plus 1d. If unsuccessful, the instructions are confusing and give a plus 1 ob disadvantage to the skill test they refer to. The written word as practice. Alternately, written instructions can be used as practice. Passing the reading test lets the player count the time spent reading as practice for the skill. Testing abilities in brief. Intent. Announce the goal of the action. Task. Indicate how you want your character to carry out an action. Incorporate a skill or stat into your description. Standard test. An ability rolled against an obstacle set by the GM. Meet the obstacle and pass the test. Versus test. A test where two characters are pitted against one another. Highest number of successes wins the test. Ties goes to the defender. Graduated test. A test with no fixed obstacle. More successes means more information, results. Linked test. A series of tests where if the character before you exceeded the obstacle, you get plus 1d. If he failed, you get plus 1 ob. Advantage. A favourable condition present in game that benefits a character, plus 1d to the test. Disadvantage. An unfavourable condition that raises the obstacle of a test. Carefully. Plus 1d advantage, plus 50% time. Introduces complications. Patiently. Extra successes go into quality. Quickly. Extra successes reduce time by 10% each. Success. The character completes the task laid out by the player in the manner of the stated intent. Failure. The player fails to achieve his intent. The character either does not complete the task or completes the task but new conditions are presented by the GM. Time. GM sets the time of the test. If the test is successful, time can be reduced by extra successes applied to working quickly. Let it ride. One test per ability stands for the situation. Help. Exponent 4 or lower gives plus 1d. Exponent 5 or higher gives plus 2d. Forks. Plus 1d for related applicable skills. Exponent 7 or higher gives plus 2d. Beginner's luck. Use root stat in place of skill. Double obstacle penalty. Instructions. Test reading or research against instruction obstacle. Success grants plus 1d to appropriate test. Failure gives plus 1 ob disadvantage. Advancing abilities. Advancement is lifeblood. Advancement is the lifeblood of Burning Wheel. The advancement system gives the feeling of a living, sweating, breathing, bleeding being in the game. It allows players to shape their characters in a variety of ways. It is vital that characters in Burning Wheel grow and change as they are played. In order for the game to be run, the GM must provide the players with obstacles. Obstacles demand tests. Tests and advancement as well as help fulfill beliefs. As the characters are tested, players mark the ability's experience log. Mark enough tests of varying difficulty and the ability advances. Routine, difficult and challenging. Each test falls into one of 3 levels of difficulty for advancement. Routine, difficult and challenging. The difficulty of a test is found by comparing the number of dice rolled against the obstacle. And it's not just about a skill exponent compared with the obstacle. Advantage, helping and fork dice all influence advancement. An Obstacle 2 test counts as routine for Exponent 4 abilities, but it's difficult for an Exponent 2 ability. Obstacle 3 tests are routine for Exponent 5 abilities, but they're difficult for Exponent 4 and challenging for Exponent 2. Number of dice rolled versus obstacle. It is important to always use the number of dice rolled for a test, not just the ability exponent. Extra dice that make a test easier for the character also means that he learns less when using such crutches. Wait a minute, you're saying? I can't roll 5 successes on 4 dice. My character's automatically going to fail that test. To this I say, you are correct. But read on, read on. The Arta chapter will show you some tricks.